Dive right in. Joining me for the first time on the coalition is someone that I've wanted to meet for quite a while. In Rhode Island, when you do indie media, you reach out to your network of friends and contacts and you say, okay, there's an issue coming up, there's something you want to discuss. Who do I talk to? And it's not always obvious who you should speak with until you let your network and your spidey sense kind of do your work for you. Three people that I know from three completely different walks of life suggested I speak to this gentleman, Randy Noka. He's joining us live in studio. We're going to talk tonight about the state of the Narragansett Indian tribe and Narragansett Indian Nation and a host of issues that have risen up, not just in the last few weeks, but over the last, sort of a lifetime if you're a typical Rhode Islander. Randy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
Now, I want to point something out that's intriguing to me. I'm not a native of Rhode Island. Been here about 25 or 30 years. I've raised two children here in Rhode Island. And what's intriguing to me is that every schoolboy, every schoolgirl learns the story of the Narragansetts, their contributions, their seminal role in the founding of Rhode Island, the work they did with Rhode Islanders, the work they did in support of Americans in the founding of this American experiment. We learn all about that. And then somewhere around the middle of the 19th century, it stops. The education stops. We're not presented with any more information as part of the curriculum. And it led me to wonder, first of all, why is that? Because the tribe is alive and well here in Rhode Island and quite active. And number two, I've got to believe that contributes to some of the controversies that surround our daily interaction with Native Americans here in Rhode Island and actually across the country, that sort of disconnect that takes place. So I guess if I can just sort of lead off, if I were to ask you what the state is of the Narragansett Indian Reservation, the Narragansett Indian Nation here in Rhode Island, what is their current state and how are things going?
Well, and again, thank you for having me. If we could back up a second, the state of the tribe and the nation, if you let in with the education that may have been taught at one time in the school system, and it ended at whatever point, 19th century. I know when I went to school here, I've lived here all my life. Born in Wesley, Rhode Island, grew up down in Richmond, right next to the reservation, town over from the reservation, or what is now the reservation. But what I recall about, that's going way back, but my high school years, or elementary school years, and whatever, the history perhaps more so, it left a lot, and still does to my understanding to this day, leaves a lot to be desired about what really felt the Native people, not necessarily Native American. Obviously, America came to be what it is long after ancestors were here. My ancestors, the Aboriginal peoples, the Narragansett, the Apache, the Wampanoag. There's all the nations that were part of this country, or this what became America. Turtle Island, as it's known, there were so many tribes. Present day, I'm maybe jumping a little bit here, but today we have 67 federally acknowledged tribes. It's a designation that the federal government, a relationship with the federal government, establishes a tribe so they can have this perhaps financial relationship with, and other things that the atrocities, they're trying to make up to some extent the atrocities that were perpetrated against the Aboriginal people. And so that's one designation, federal acknowledgement, federal recognition, if you will, 560 some tribes. There's also state recognized tribes, various states that recognize groups within their boundaries. And then ultimately, more importantly perhaps, tribes recognizing tribes. How this country came to be, what is lacking in the school system, and it's a sore point with me, is I don't know why, and it's a good question, why isn't there more about it? I can only assume and be comfortable with what I'm thinking. This government, this country more so, I don't want to say embarrassed, or because regret by definition implies a conscience. I don't think a lot of people hear how it's evolved several hundred years after 500 something, how many years now after Columbus apparently discovered this country, and manifest destiny and doctrine of discovery and these rights that people allowed themselves to have because they were different from those that the countries that they invaded. But why doesn't this country teach more? You know, they can make, and rightfully so, the the Holocaust, the other, even today, the rights, the human rights violations that other countries take against their own people, North Korea and other countries that some terrible things are being done against their people. And this country can point those out, but yet it will never point out what was done to the people here. Ever will never will they be able to pay back the price of what was done to the people here, what was done to my ancestors. But it's a question that maybe someday, several years back, my wife and I, we were working with the South Kingston school system, trying to get a curriculum change that provided a better opportunity, a better education for the students as to what really happened in this country. It's not like we're gone. The Narragansetts, thank you for pointing out, the Narragansetts are still here. We got a little postage stamp size reservation down in the Charlestown area, 1,900 acres or thereabouts. But this used to be all Narragansett territory. We didn't know boundaries, you know, like the states have bound themselves now and towns and all. This was Narragansett territory. And now we have this little stamp-sized reservation down there, but we're still here, regardless of what people know or don't know, and hopefully shows like yours and maybe here whatever tidbits in the history books, or what people can glean on computers nowadays. The history of this country, what it did to the original the Aboriginal peoples, it should be known. You can't point out other atrocities without owning up to what you did also.
No, that's an outstanding point. And by the way, it's occurring to me now because so much of my work is in the moment that, in fact, this is Columbus Day weekend, and your visit actually was unintentional in sort of coinciding with Columbus Day weekend. It's just an interesting coincidence because the tribe, there's been so many issues over the years where it would appear to myself as a very interested but very much an outsider, it would appear that the state government in this part of New England, Rhode Island in particular, seems to be almost unanimously working in opposition to any type of interest that the tribe may have. And I want to go back in time and just sort of and go through some of those issues. But right now, I mean, how many folks are, if you will, and as a libertarian, it appalls me to use this term, but how many people are recognized right now as being part of the Narragansett tribe here in Rhode Island?
Oh, we have roughly 2,700 members. But real quick, Pat, Columbus Day weekend, it maybe shows a little bit of hope that, and no disrespect to any ethnicity or Columbus Day or whatever however people view things, including holidays and who discovered this country. A lot of states, certainly some towns and companies, are realizing that Columbus isn't who he was said to be. He's not the discoverer of this country, and they're taking action to downplay or even disrecognize, if you will. And again, it's not a slight against him personally or his ethnicity or whatever, but the truth about him discovering this country, it's being understood better, it's being explained better. No, he never set foot on this country, and because of that, in a small way, progress is being made for the sake of they're taking away that recognition to that holiday. We don't celebrate Columbus Day.
Right.
We don't celebrate Thanksgiving like most people do, and that's no disrespect to anyone how they.
But this is important because there are a lot of folks out there who will trivialize the controversy surrounding Columbus Day, and you as an integral member of the Narragansett community here in Rhode Island, as someone who spent a lifetime advocating for both a recognition of the realistic history of the Narragansetts, not just the sugar-coated, Pollyannish view that so many children are fed, and as someone who's invested a lifetime in promoting and trying to build the community in a very positive manner, this is a deeply personal issue to you. This is not something to be trivialized. So I want to know how folks who are Aboriginal, Native American, whichever term you choose to use, how do they feel about this Columbus Day controversy? I mean, is there a unanimity there that the country needs to move beyond this obsession with Christopher Columbus and recognize that there, in fact, are layers of issues here?
Well, it would be nice, I guess. I would never expect naive to think that this country is ever going to do the right thing totally. You know, Columbus Day, Thanksgiving Day, and how even some of my own people and other native people, if you will, how they go about recognizing or not recognizing that's truly a personal thing. It's a federal holiday, and yeah, who doesn't enjoy a day off? I'm not knocking that, certainly, but to give recognition to someone that and what he did to the people back then, never mind that he never stepped foot here. What he did, he took people back, you know, slavery and all, and stole people from their homelands and things as such. There's nothing honorable about that man as far as I'm concerned. They give honor because they had to put it on someone. Hey, you discovered America. No, he didn't. But what he also did, the atrocities that he perpetrated back at that time. But that's my way of thinking, and don't fault me for it. You know, you don't have to agree, or the viewers don't have to agree, but open your eyes to the realities. If you're hearing anything from me, and it maybe spark some kind of interest or a desire to look into things further, then beautiful. You may not, again, find it the history in the history books being taught, but you know, look at the computers and different things. But I didn't want to jump too far back on that. But you know, you asked about the reservation and the people and all. And again, we have roughly 2,700 members of what at one time was tens of thousands. Real quick, in the 1673, I think the year was, the Great Swamp Massacre, when the colonists and militia, one of our winter encampments, they came and mutilated and killed and our women and children that were in, and elders that were in that camp. You know, that's part of the history of this state and what became Rhode Island and my ancestors. There's nothing glamorous or something. There's nothing to be proud of how this country evolved, how this state evolved, what they did to the people. I don't want to keep repeating things as such, but
no, this is important because this really sets the backdrop. You know, I've had people reach out to me since I mentioned that you were going to be on the show, and you know, it's things like reparations with regard to, for example, what happened with slavery, reparations or recognition of what was done to the Aboriginal people in the founding of this nation are challenging because on one level, folks will say, well, I'm not responsible for that, I'm not guilty of that, I wasn't alive then. But at the same time, the cultural benefits, dare I use the word privilege, but the cultural benefits, the economic benefits that have accrued to generations of Americans as a result of their ability to essentially wipe out for the large part a native population and take advantage of all that the American continent had to offer is undeniable. It's uncomfortable. It's not something that's easily discussed, but at the same time, in this nation, it's critical, given how government seems to work now, that we get back to certain basic truths. Historical facts happened. Right. Stuff happened, and a lot of it was ugly. And you bring up a great point to the effect that we continually reflect on the validity of other governments, and in some cases work to unseat those governments based on human rights violations or atrocities, most of which were real, sometimes by our system imagined. But to the degree that we feel a validity to do that, and yet at the same time ignore our own history, that's difficult. And it's not intellectually honest.
Right. This country, certainly in my opinion, and opinions of many people worldwide, this is the greatest country in the world as far as the rights that people have to whatever extent. Not necessarily totally equal across the board and broad brush, everyone has the same rights. We know that not to be the case, and maybe we'll get there someday. But don't take away the reality of how we got to be where we are today. 8 years ago now, 9 years ago, we elected for the first time a man of minority persuasion, I don't want to focus on necessarily the African American part of it, because it was a man of minority persuasion, and yeah, he happened to be African American, Barack Obama, and who could have foreseen that back in the '60s and whatever, and beyond that, no one could have foreseen that.
You and I are old enough to remember that would be, when there was a time when Archie Bunker was not seen as a parody by a significant part of the country.
Absolutely, and to think that 40 years, 50 years removed from that point in history, the country has grown that much, and open-mindedness and taking the blinders off to an extent. But yet, and I mean no disrespect to whatever political affirmation people have that may be watching, but now, after that, after 8 years of President Obama, we've elected a man that is on record as supporting or giving, not disrecognizing or not seeing a problem with white supremacists. And there's, if I get myself in harm's way with some of the viewers, then so be it. I'm here to speak today.
Well, you're here to speak for yourself. I mean, you're here to speak your truth, and
Right.
that's why we have this show.
And I appreciate it. But it's like, yeah, we made great strides, if only for the fact of how he was elected, President Obama. But yet, 8 years later, and are we moving backwards?
You'll get no disagreement with me on certain levels when I look at how this country is this backlash against people who are political refugees from other nations. That to your point, that's what's kind of startling about this conversation. To your point, we quote unquote celebrate freedom, but at the same time, for those who are political refugees, both native to the country and newly arrived to the country, to openly engage in this sort of crusade against them, trying to accrue to them all the problems our society has right now, is ludicrous.
Right.
Particularly when, given, you and I grew up, I'm probably a little older than you, but you and I grew up at a time when there were established truths that were complete fiction. We've moved beyond that. For a variety of reasons, we should be smarter than that now.
It should.
We should be.
Yep.
That's the emphasis, should be. Because all of this continues to have, and again, an outsider's perspective, a real world effect on the quality of life, the living conditions, the opportunities that are afforded to Aboriginal people. I mean, there seems to be across this country still, despite years post the Regulatory Gaming Act on the federal level, and despite years of, and I guess for lack of a better term, patronizing behavior by a variety of political leaders, you still have, from an outsider's perspective, a significant economic divide that takes place in many parts of the country between our native population and the current, folks who came to this country later.
And I appreciate that point, Pat. Backing up real quick on something, perhaps I'll just focus on what you just were. Tribes today, yes, there's been great strides with how the federal government works with tribes, with grants and opportunities and protections, if you will, rights, Indian Civil Rights Act. There's different things that some of the viewers perhaps may view as, well, yeah, they're getting a lot of things and all. I don't care. This country will never make up for the debt that they owe to my people, what they put on my people. Never will they make it up. And the rights that we may have as a nation, the Narragansett and other nations, our reservation and what rights we have over that, and the people that may come there, it's not the same as Rhode Island. It's never going to be the same as, it's on the same level as a state government and the rights. We still have the great father, the federal government, looking over us one way or another and maybe changing things. Trump, again, I'll name him as it is, there's concerns out there in the Indian country that he may try and unmind or take away to whatever extent some of the strides and gains we've made as nations by some of the past presidents. And a large part of it started with Richard Nixon, of all people. It's like, back then the Self-Determination Act, that's what it was called. And it was when Richard Nixon was in. And some of the things that, a history lesson, even myself, it's like sometimes my eyes open to some of the things that were done throughout the history of our people. Termination Act, Detribalization Act.
Yeah, feel free to go into some detail on that, because folks, that's kind of understanding we're trying to get. I mean, that's, so much of that is glossed over in terms of history, that what happened in the run-up to the current day isn't really understood in this whole sort of federalization of the treatment of Indian nations. So feel free to go into some detail on that.
Okay, yeah, and then, believe me, is whatever I may know, I'm far from an expert on it, you know,
That's fine.
historical insights and all, but nonetheless, how has this country evolved, if you will, and, you know, the original 13 colonies and westward movement and all, you know, each movement, each step that others from other nations, other countries, you know, you want to talk about immigrants and you know, how things today may be changing under the current president's administration. The only people that are native to this country are my ancestors and those from them. Everyone else is an immigrant, one way or another. No disrespect to anyone. They're all immigrants. So what gives this man, this current administration, the right to say, well, wait a minute, let's put a border up around Mexico. Why not Canada then? What's so different about the Mexican people that this man wants to treat them the way, but not see there's not a difference how Canada is being viewed? I'm not disrespecting either country or any race, creed, or color when I say that, but I digress when it comes to, get off the point, how this country evolved. And I mentioned the Termination Act and the detribalization, maybe a good focus for the sake of my tribe and the local. In 1880, the state of Rhode Island had been founded then, I don't know how long, 100 years, whatever, and there were dealings with the Narragansett, however many there were back then, you know, and the lands that we lost as more people came. You know, Providence grew there, and Warwick, and all these other towns that evolved. My tribe ended up with a small parcel down in the Charlestown area. But in 1880, it's called the Detribalization Act. The state of Rhode Island, the government at the time, and my ancestors that were here at the time said, we're going to, that's what they call it, we're going to detribalize you. You're not going to be a tribe anymore. You're not going to practice your customs. You're not going to speak your language. You're not going to do anything that is unique to you as a Narragansett. You're going to take on the customs and the rules and live under the rules and regulations of Rhode Island. That's what this state did to my people back then. Detribalization Act. You are no longer a tribe. And that's, you know, that happened quite often out there in the rest of this country. The Trail of Tears, some of your viewers may have heard about. The forced removal of people from the North Carolina area, Cherokee Nation. The forced removal in Chitimacha and other tribes from North Carolina and other points to out in the Midwest, Oklahoma and all. Can you imagine, would anyone that's watching this show and listening, whatever, would you allow or put up with anyone forcibly removing you from your territory, from your home on Canal Street or wherever it is? No, we're taking you out of here, we're moving you to Oklahoma. That's what happened to my people, our people back then. And no one would stand for that now. So why can't they understand when we still have some concerns and we still stand on what we are as Native people, and we'll never forget that. And we expect you to, if not understand it, then at least honor it. You know, it doesn't make us different, it makes you different from us. This is our country. So hopefully, maybe that will hit a nerve. Would be no one. You wouldn't allow anyone to force you out of your home.
Right.
Why do you think? Why should we? And we're going to always hold that, not anger, but that reality. That, you know, because if not for me and others, whatever, speaking, having these opportunities, then no one's going to know the truth. Because the history books don't teach it.
Right. Now, that Detribalization Act ended up having long-term implications for the tribe currently, didn't it? I mean, the tribe has faced a series of obstacles there's a tendency in American history to trivialize the presence of certain tribes, that to imply, I don't believe this, but I just want to reflect on this, to imply that certain tribal nations are almost conjured up or almost invented for the purposes of taking advantage of federal laws. It's an abhorrent way to think. It's not based on fact. And yet, again, it's another attempt to trivialize the concerns and the history of our indigenous people here. The Narragansett Indian tribe has had to essentially fight for recognition, despite playing a seminal role in the founding of one of the original American colonies. to a certain degree, you're still fighting for pure recognition that tribes around the nation get, aren't you? In the sense that, and we're going to get into this a little bit, special laws were enacted to prevent you from taking advantage of the Indian Gaming Act. Special laws were enacted, or court cases were fought against an attempt by you to take land that you folks had legitimately purchased to reincorporate it in land that essentially you at one time owned, that you essentially had to go back out and buy to reincorporate that. The entire weight and effort of the Rhode Island government, and to a certain degree the federal Supreme Court, seemed to conspire against you from doing that. I'm sorry, I'm not finding humor in this. As my reading over this in the last few days, again, the polite word, because we're not FCC approved here, but I have to keep it clean, I'm aghast. I don't know if that even really conveys the full emotion here. But that essentially, in the eyes of the state of Rhode Island, in the 19th century, you guys were delegitimized, and it's a onus that you've had to fight and still continue to fight, don't you?
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. Again, the Tribalization Act, it did what it did. It never stopped us from recognizing who we are to ourselves, certainly. Maybe the state thought they got away with something. And more to your point, absolutely. Every day, every generation that's gone since, every day, you're fighting, whatever powers that be, external to the tribe, town, state, whatever, federal government. You're always on guard to defend what you know to be the case about yourself and the prices that your ancestors paid, excuse me, to have me be here, have this opportunity to speak about it. There was a great price to pay by the ancestors in order for us to still be recognized and hold ourselves up and proud of it. I'm a Narragansett, and be proud of that because of what we learned growing up individually in our homes and all, our parents and grandparents and all. But yes, you alluded to some of the things that Rhode Island did. My tribe, the only tribe in this country to have its, under the Indian Game and Regulatory Act, federal law that allows tribes to build a game on their reservations under laws that the state allow. The tribes can't just do it. The state laws still have some kind of effect or oversight over it. Utah and Hawaii, the native populations can't build game there because those states don't have gaming, as examples. But my tribe, the only tribe that had its rights stripped of it under the Indian Game and Regulatory Act by the late Senator Chafee back in '96.
And you were specifically singled out.
Absolutely.
They didn't even, again, it's horrifying. I'm not a big government guy. I'm the chairman of the Libertarian Party. I believe in small government, but I also have, I believe, a fundamental decency here. This wasn't some obscure attempt to say that tribe is founded whose leaders interface with, individuals who were seminal in religious history. No, they actually wrote it and said, sorry, none for you.
Yeah, according, if I remember the verbiage correctly, as far as the Indian Game and Regulatory Act goes, Narragansett Indian lands will not apply under that act. Something to that effect.
Right.
Yeah, we were singled out by Senator Chafee at the time. Federal law, they passed it. They had it attached to the Omnibus Appropriation Act, and it became federal law. The smoke shop, I realized you got other points.
No, this is all important. I mean, we were talking about before, and some of the folks who work here, we still remember the smoke shop rate. If you're of a certain age, you remember the sheer lunacy of that, because all you folks were trying to do was take advantage or utilize the same rules and regulations that others, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that other independent Indian nations around the country were taking advantage of to promote economic activity on your behalf. You were entrepreneurs, essentially.
The smoke shop, the tribe opened smoke shop for business selling tax-free cigarettes down there. It did make big news. Went on the third day of being open. After trying to work out things with then Governor Kacheri, he always threw the casino into any discussion. So we've had various efforts to try to build a casino. And we're not just a casino tribe, we're trying to get a casino. We're trying to do things, economic development for our people.
Right.
So we can provide better for our people. But nonetheless, we've had these efforts, and one way or another, they've been thwarted by the state government or federal government even. The smoke shop, we had been open for a couple days. The governor ordered the state troopers to come down. 51 troopers came down that day, on the third day, and arrested the chief, the 3 council people, including myself, my wife, taken down by some of the biggest troopers on the force at the time, all because of an alleged illegal sales of cigarettes. We didn't have the state tax stamp on our cigarettes.
Right.
We're a sovereign nation. We had a right, and as far as we're concerned, to sell cigarettes. It's not like it was cigarettes. Every store around sells cigarettes, but yet we were focused on for selling them under the no tax stamp of Rhode Island. Well, Rhode Island's tax stamps don't apply to Massachusetts. They shouldn't apply to the reservation.
Right.
So yes, it was an opportunity for the tribe. It was very popular. Sales were great, but and years later, after we went to trial, those that got arrested, we went to trial right over there across the river in state court, and it's just part of the history. Right. I know an hour doesn't do justice for what can be discussed, but it's just examples of what is still wrong. If people don't want to agree with everything we're trying, then fine. Or if people don't think we should have rights, that's their opinion. But I know that we would expect to have the same opportunities that other tribes have, just because we're in Rhode Island, and it's shown itself to be a different animal, this state.
Right, and I have to take a quick break to thank one of our sponsors right now, but what we'll reflect on in the next few minutes. And by the way, if you're just joining us, I've got Randy Noka from the Narragansett Indian Nation here in studio at the Coalition. We're talking about, I'll call it the state of the tribe right now, and where they are on a variety of issues. But here you've got a state that is literally tripping over itself, actually writing a check for millions of dollars a year as part of the state budget to subsidize the media operations of the Twin River Corporation. Seemingly going into a mini collective nervous breakdown this week when the realization that lottery revenues were slipping, where casino gaming and lottery revenues are a significant, I believe it's the second or third, please correct me if I'm wrong, second or third largest source of revenue for the state, yet have worked aggressively to make sure that despite the rest of the nation as a policy permitting Indian nations to engage in that, subject to state law, they've excluded you. I'm not, for the record, I'm not a fan of casino gaming. I don't see it as a great economic development tool, but as a libertarian, I truly believe that that everyone should be able to have the access to engage in casino gaming. I don't believe in government monopolies being granted. In this case, we've got a single corporation now who's the exclusive beneficiary of the casino gaming in this state, while simultaneously seemingly hell-bent to prevent your tribe from recognizing the same benefits that tribal nations across the country are allowed to. We're going to get into that for a minute. It's just, folks, if you're just joining us, Randy Noka is in studio with us. We're discussing all issues regarding Narragansett Indian Tribe. We've spoken about the history, the rather sordid history of how this state seemingly has single-handedly conspired to, at every turn, discriminate against the Narragansett Indian Tribe, going through the early bloody history to now the political battles that take place in the courthouse and at the State House. I have to mention, of course, one of our sponsors, the New England Cannabis Convention, NECAN/RI, folks, October 28th and 29th, here in Rhode Island. A festival, if you will, a convention, a study session, and a counter session for folks who are involved in the medical cannabis program here in Rhode Island and nearby Massachusetts. I invite you to attend. It's a day well spent. You'll be able to speak to caregivers. You'll be able to speak to folks who are advocates, people with legal expertise. You'll see vendors helping folks who are involved in growing, vendors who are involved in the processing and the medical, if you will, the edible portion of the medical cannabis program. If you've got someone in your life who is who finds themselves in the position of being either chronically in pain or in a variety of forms of medical ailments, there is a demonstrated efficacy in the medical cannabis program to improve the quality of one's life significantly. And also ongoing research, where and whenever possible, despite our federal government's best efforts, into the healing effects that are accrued as a result of the medical cannabis program. So folks, October 28th and 29th, NECAN/RI. It's a wonderful day. If you've got someone in your family who's a member of the program in particular, if they're suffering, there's a great sense of community at this event as well. So it's not just a trade show, it's not just a bunch of quick sell artists. You'll see members of the entire community statewide here. So again, NECAN/RI. Folks, you are in fact listening to the Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network, broadcasting live here at the Go Local Live Broadcasting Center, 90 Way Bossett Street, in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the Naked City, the city of 1,000 stories. We're telling a couple of them tonight. Randy Noka's in studio. We have a friend, a member of the tribal nation, is going to join us in a few minutes and get his reflections on some of these issues. Let's talk about the economics, if you will, the business development, the opportunities, where the tribe is. They've been denied, the entrepreneurial ability to engage in casino gaming. That's essentially self-directed. What is the economic status of the tribal nation now? How are folks doing?
Well, economically, we don't, and I'll qualify it, I suppose. A lot of these opportunities, I never, personally anyways, never like to, a lot of the tribal laundry, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But, for the tribal members listening and watching, then, hopefully what I'm sharing and will share, that, you're involved, you're aware of things, and you want to get more involved. Because as we're talking about some of these external forces and powers and problems that the tribe has realized failed us one way or another, we're not a people that just looks for government handouts or whatever the case may be. That some people may think, and no, we take advantage of opportunities that the federal government allows as much as possible. Sometimes your hands are tied, or whatever opportunities that the states may curtail. But there's programs out there that the federal government provides to tribes based on historically the atrocities that were perpetrated on different things. But at the same time, on the reservation, government structure and administrative structure, and how people, one way or another, come on the reservation looking into programs and assistance and all. We're not unlike any other government looking out for its people. State of Rhode Island, the state government, state house over there, we have the same roles, responsibilities, and desires for our people as Rhode Island, as Burrillville, as Providence does for its people, and how you try to look out for your residents, if you will. Right now, and down through the years, the tribe has considered various things. In the end, it's a decision that should be the tribes. It shouldn't be the state or the federal government dictating how or what we can do. If the law allows it, then don't hold us different than others just because we're in Narragansett or we're on our reservation and all. We're to the greatest extent a sovereign nation within Rhode Island in this case. And a nation that should be able to look out for its own under the rules and regulations. It's not like we're lawless or clueless or without rules down there. And it's not like we're just some dime store, cigar shop, Indian in the corner, whatever. No, we're people that speak our mind and will defend what we know to be ours, or rights, or whatever the case may be, and hopefully have the respect of those that we have to work with, or work it out the best we can, or this court system sometimes, like the smoke shop raid. Right now, we don't have a lot going on down there, but doesn't mean we haven't tried, or doesn't mean other things aren't on the burner. Or doesn't mean other things aren't moving to whatever extent. I know this, and I wanted to say that more to the Narragansetts that might be listening. As a tribal member, we all have the right to have our voices heard, be it outside the reservation or internal to the reservation, and whatever leaders or so-called leaders might be in place at the time. Be it in the past or in the future. every tribal member has a right to have 26,700 whatever voices have their voices heard. And if decisions are supposed to be made by the tribe, then darn it, have the tribe make the decisions. No one leader or two leaders or whatever have the right to dictate or make a decision for the tribe as a whole. Much like the decisions made by various governments and all. And I'm talking, maybe in riddles here for some people.
No, that's fine.
Because they don't know everything that's going on the res.
No, but there's been controversy in the last few months about tribal leadership. Hey, explain how is the tribe, in terms of the legalities, how is the tribe structured in terms of its leadership? Not so much the individual names, but on a physical level. I mean, you have a chief, but break down the other roles, if you will.
Yeah, our governmental structure, when it's operating right and legally, according to our rules and regulations, our election rules and regulations and all, the chief sachem and the 9-person council form the 10-person government.
Mm-hmm.
The chief sachem position is not unlike, say, the president or the governor. Council is not unlike the Congress or General Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
Different roles and responsibilities to an extent, but to the greatest degree possible, hopefully coming together with decisions that they can move forward with, as a body of 10. You're not always going to agree. We're not different in that way. But that's the government structure. Administratively, there's an administration with various programs, social services and natural resources, tribal police department, normal administrative programs.
Yeah, and let me jump in for a second. You've got, because ultimately there's the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Right.
And again, naivete, typical Rhode Islander. I live in a suburb called Cumberland, most famous for being named after a mid-market convenience store chain. That's how interesting we are. So I'm not.
Is it really?
Yeah, I believe it is. All right, where Papa Gino's is supposedly the best pizza in town. Anyhow, so a lot of us really aren't aware, other than through popular movies and when events all of a sudden bubble up to the top, we're not really aware of the structure. So you have your own police department, you have your own judiciary.
The structure's there.
Right.
Is someone legally in the position? No.
Okay, so interesting. Is the Bureau of Indian Affairs on site in the reservation? Are there folks representing the federal government there, or is it someone that you report to from afar?
The BIA is the overseer on the part of the federal government,
Right.
Department of Interior, the overseer of the federal government and the tribal nations. To the greatest extent, there's other entities, EPA and Justice and whatever the case may be, but by and large, BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, has the most direct and ongoing relationship with the tribal nations.
Mm-hmm.
Grants perhaps channeled through the BIA. BIA is divided out into different regions. Our regional office is down in Nashville, Tennessee. It's called the Eastern Region Office.
Okay.
And then again, all the regional offices report up to Interior, the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs. So yeah, the federal government has an ongoing relationship through their agencies and departments and all. But by and large, it's the BIA that has the biggest relationship with the tribes.
So in the fullest sense, when you enter what is recognized, at least by the federal government, as the Narragansett Indian Reservation, it is in fact a sovereign nation with your own laws, allegedly your own law enforcement, and all the protection and rights accorded to, allegedly.
Well, I don't know the usage of allegedly. As far as we're concerned, yeah, will be argued by outside forces, state, whatever. Do state laws apply? The Settlement Act in 1978 and acknowledgement in 83, for my tribe, that is.
Right.
The state will be at loggerheads as to if state law applies or not. There's been legal battles and there'll be more in the future.
Well, and in fact, it's that 1983, correct me if I'm wrong, it's that 1983 recognition date that has created so much trouble for you, in a sense, in adding land to the reservation, because it's post-1936, or something to that. 34,
yeah,
okay.
Right.
That has created, again, that's what I mean, the legacy of Rhode Island's interference into your sovereign nation's government has created this ongoing challenge as to your ability to take advantage and to prosper under whatever opportunities are afforded to you by the BIA and by the laws of Friday. It strikes me that, this legacy just continues on and on and on, where you run afoul of some obscure technicality, yet it has this inordinate impact on the day-to-day life of the tribe.
And technicalities, nuances, tweakings of the law, not little letters of the law
Right.
being used to one's benefit, or holding down, maybe in this case, my tribe. But, it's not just Rhode Island, it's not just in Narragansett, it's all inclusive out there.
Right.
A lot of tribes, as well as they may be doing economically, there's still battles and whatever the case may be with state. And even as well as they're doing, and only for a focal point, the casinos that a lot of tribes, Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods and other tribes around the country, that economic development opportunity has done tremendous benefit to the tribes and employment and health benefits and whatever the case may be, much like, again, governments try for their people. But it's not just that, and we can't take it for granted, because the law can change tomorrow, and suddenly the law that allowed for this opportunity for tribes, short of the Narragansett, could change in a heartbeat. The makeup of the United States Supreme Court and some of them justices. I remember when we went down there, the Kachiri Act, the Kachiri issue, the land in the trust that you speak of, that
Right.
the viewers may know, we tried to add additional lands for a housing site. A low-income HUD-sponsored, Housing and Urban Development, federal program-sponsored housing site. We had 12 units built on our reservation for our elders to move into. And the state of Rhode Island and the town of Charlestown stepped up and said, no, wait a minute, you're not getting that land in the trust. We got to argue this out and see if you can take additional land in the trust. Effectively, that was the focus of it. Long story short, we lost in federal court. And again, it was former Governor Kachiri that led the argument, but he happened to be the pawn at the time. It's been other governors, and it's been the same attitude. Democrat, Republican. It's like, let's hold them back to whatever extent we can, keep them in change, if you will. So now we can't add additional lands to especially a housing site. Our elders that died, my mother-in-law died, that would have been a resident at that housing site, but for the town of Charlestown stopping it. And they wouldn't let us, it wasn't our reservation anyways, so town regulatory authority was over it anyway. You guys are not working that project until we work out this issue in court. 12 years later, whatever we lost in court, the project, the houses are dilapidated and inhabitable, and they still sit there today on foundations. People can go down to across the street from part of the reservation in Charlestown, off of Kings Factory Road. Look at that housing site. And look, it's despicable what these people will go to try and hold back or hold in check, in this case, my people. Real quick, I don't know where we are for time, but I wanted to go back to my the viewers that might be Narragansett, and it's a point of, I'm repeating myself, no one person or people, group of people, a handful of people can make decisions that the tribe has to make, agreements, whatever the case may be. It has to be a tribal decision. And so don't let anyone have you believe or come to with the understanding, again, this is my people, the Narragansett, that any one person or a handful of people can make decisions that bind our nation or our people in any way that isn't allowed under tribal law.
So now we've got the situation with this water.
That's what I was sort of hinting at there without saying that.
All right, so I'm old enough, one of my leading philosophers in life, I've got a few, Ricky Ricardo. As Ricky would say to Lucy, splain Lucy, splain. So I'm faced with, I call it local government's gone mad. You can tell from the show that the medical cannabis program is near and dear to our heart here on the show. We believe in self-determination and little or no federal government interference in people's lives. I think your history would probably support a lot of that. So in the case of the medical cannabis program, briefly, a handful of town councils around the state just decided, that's a ticket, we're going to pass our own law. Yeah, let's pass a law against that. Well, they lost in court. No surprise. Now you've also got the prospect. Now you've got the folks in Burrillville who are fighting this power plant. I'm a strong supporter of a community's rights to self-determination. I'm also a believer in property rights, but as a libertarian, we have something that'd be interesting to talk about offline sometime. We have something called the non-aggression principle, where we as libertarians essentially take an oath to not engage in acts that aggressively or coercively take from others. It's kind of a unique concept in politics. So, I have mixed feelings in one sense because of private property rights, but I look at the situation of Burrillville and I look at the community and the outright harm it will do to the community and their way of life, and it's offensive to me that a government process has been set up really to sidestep their concerns and works again, if this sounds at all familiar, let me know, works again seemingly in complete ignorance or a determined avoidance of any discussion whatsoever of the community's concerns, and they're going to drop this bomb of a power plant. And you've got communities now who are claiming to be able to sell water. So how did you guys get involved in this?
Well, I'll be 100% honest. I first came to be aware of this alleged agreement between whoever with the tribe, not with the tribe, individual or individuals with the tribe, in an article in the Providence Journal. And that's why I was reflecting to those more pointed comments to
Whose
tribal members.
water are they selling?
Oh, well, no, part of our reservation, good for us. At the time, real quick, at the time we had the Settlement Act, Land Claim Settlement Act, how our reservation became established, 1,900 acres thereabouts. They had money, federal government provided the money to buy acreage, private landowners. The state of Rhode Island also put up whatever money, provided 900-acre swamp. And I'm sure at the time the state of Rhode Island thought, yeah, we'll get over on the Indians here, let them take a 900-acre swamp. Little did they know, and fast forward to today, it's one of the largest underground aquifers in the state of Rhode Island.
Really?
Yes, 900-acre swamp recharge area for the aquifer, and the water that flows in the ground there, I don't know. That's the water people that can answer those questions. But somehow this agreement, which tribal members don't know about, and that's what I was speaking to you about, tribal members that are listening, find out about it. Don't let anyone mislead you. This agreement that we will back up, again, I'm going by the story, we're the backup, the second in line to provide water if, I believe it's the town of Johnson, isn't able to provide it for whatever rules, regulations, or perhaps. And from what I've heard, I've met with some folks in Burrillville and that oppose the project, the plant. I don't know how the government, eminent domain and these other things that government can do on occasion, or in this case, maybe force a power plant onto a town that doesn't want it, as well as all the other surrounding towns. From what I've come to learn, I've only been a couple days involved in finding out more and all, but if Johnson doesn't provide the water, then we're next in line. But this power plant and fracking and whatever the case may be, and natural resources, the gas and water and all, and the drain that it would have, the water it needs to run.
Right.
Never mind the environmental concerns and the pollution and all that's going to happen. And who would support something like this? If great if it provides jobs, but any construction is going to provide jobs. From what I understand, a little bit I know about this project, it's going to be a great detriment to the environment, a great detriment to the town of Burrillville in this case, surrounding areas, acid rain and everything that can. I'm no scientist, and when it comes to these things, I'm not far from an expert, but common sense would bring questions to your mind. Who wants this in their backyard? Who wants, but yet here it is. Burrillville might be, I guess the decision's going to come in December, January, whatever, by a 3-person utilities commission or whatever.
That's what they call a siting board, yeah.
Yeah, and those 3 may hold the fate of Burrillville and however many residents are there, and all of northern Rhode Island for that matter, and wherever the wind may blow the polluted air. I know the country, and we need power in different ways of being looked into. I'm also with the understanding, not to lose focus on the detrimental part of it, is Rhode Islanders Rhode Islanders tend to may gain $1 or $2 off their electric bills by the time this is up and running fully. It's not going to save big money for Rhode Islanders.
Right.
So what is the good part of this? But for the sake of the water in Rhode Island and the Narragansett part of it, the Narragansett tribe will say yes or no to this water being provided. Not any couple individuals, not President Trump, not the governor, not anyone. The Narragansett tribe is going to say yes or no to this agreement in the end. And however it may have been signed so far, until the tribe sits and resolves this or talks it out, and if the tribe says yes, then fine. But it's a tribal decision. It's not mine as a leader or anyone else as a leader or
Right.
alleged leader or whatever. But
So this is really, this caught you by surprise. And you,
Oh, yeah.
and to say that you're intimately involved in the community affairs day to day is by no means an understatement. I mean, overstatement. I mean, you're clearly, I mean, what are folks, from what you've been able to gather, and there's been so little information, you're right, what are folks' initial reaction to this notion? It strikes me that while you may have discovered a very valuable natural resource, selling it to a power plant can't be very attractive.
And what I've learned, the big trucks, several a day or whatever the case may be, what the water need of what this plant needs when it's fully operational, millions of gallons a year, whatever. I don't have the exact numbers, but nonetheless. And my understanding, this company, this is the largest one it's going to build in this country, but it has the power plants dotted around this nation. Their drain, 25-year agreements is the norm. And at the end of 25 years, maybe when the power plant served its purpose, too bad for your water if you still have any. A recharge area, it's not necessarily going to keep recharging if the rain stops or slows down or whatever. What good's a recharge area if it has no water to recharge with? But what happens here on? I know there's a meeting for the sake of the project. There's a meeting next week up in Barville I plan on attending. As a tribal member, I look forward to being able to make a conscientious decision based on all the information that the tribe will make as far as this or anything in the future. Elections, who's sitting as a government officials, who's sitting or not sitting as a judge, governmental structure and administrative structure and all. That's a decision of the tribe, not unlike any other town or state or whatever the case may be. The residents or the citizens of that town or state or this nation elect their officials, or by their rules of whatever governs the rules that govern have to be followed. No one's above the law, no one's above the rules, even those that think that they make the rules and laws.
So by no means is this a finished deal on any stretch. There are people out there who would try. Whenever you have a large company like Invenergy, they'll try to convince people by words, by messaging, by advertising about the inevitability of something, while at the same time not really having any legitimate claim to the authority to do this. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but at this point in time, no real decision has been made by the tribe.
Absolutely, no tribal decision. Whoever signed that agreement, and those that are listening within the tribe, they know who signed it, who thinks they have the right to sign it, whatever the case may be. It's just the structure of things. The tribe will make decisions one way or another at some point. However, there is this concern to say, this company may think that what they have is legitimate, perhaps in Rhode Island law, whatever the case may be. But if someone's not authorized, entitled to sign a document, then that invalidates it or brings question of legalities to it. But nonetheless, may they think they do have a right, and I'd love to see this agreement just to see what it does, how it obligates tribal resources, how it financially benefits people to whatever extent. Because I'm sure if you're selling water, then there's money coming in. Where's the money going? How much money? Who's benefited maybe already? Who's going to benefit in the future? How is the tribal members going to benefit? Was there a finder's fee that's already been? I don't know nothing about it, and it's not that it's because it's a Narragansett tribe. This agreement could be with Johnson. I don't know anything about the Johnson agreement, but as a town resident of Johnson, if I was, I'd want to know about it, and I'd probably have already seen a copy of it.
Right. So the jury is very much still out on this. There is This is going to be something that you folks are obviously going to take very seriously, and because of the amount of money, but also the use and the suitability of the use of some very dear natural resources are at stake. So there's a deliberation process that has yet to take place.
And the tribe will have that opportunity, one way or another, at whatever point, tomorrow or next month, whenever the time avails itself. But real quick, my tribe, some of the viewers, maybe perhaps yourself, DAPL, the Quota Pipeline out in North Dakota, there was a great undertaking by a national uprising out on the reservation. People from all over focusing on going out there and supporting the tribe and trying to stop this pipeline. And Obama's administration, they recognized it and held off and whatever. And as soon as Trump comes in the next day or whatever, shortly thereafter, get the pipeline going again. But in defense of the environmental concerns, in defense of that nation, the Lakota Nation, people from all over, whites, blacks, natives, you name it, they were out there and staying with those people for months on end. But it felt so good that uprising, that show of unity, if you will, that people were galvanized behind that. And yet, there's something about this, again, a little bit I know about this power plant, but something's wrong. If we can try and stop a pipeline and the potential harm that does, but yet provide water to something that may be just as much a detriment to the environment or Mother Earth or whatever the case may be, things got to be looked into deeply. Is this the only way? And there's a power plant just down the road from what I've seen.
Right.
It's like
these folks. We have a saying on the show. We are Burrowville. We support their right to oppose this and their right to demand true due process in arriving at whatever decision occurs. And we support them as a community to have a level of self-determination in place so that their lives are not disrupted for short-term economic gain at the expense. I'm a capitalist. I believe in economic gain. But when it happens, in my personal opinion, at the expense of others, I can't suffer that. I just absolutely can't. We're almost out of time. You've got a buddy out front. Just want to bring your buddy up for? Did he come in?
I've been watching.
Okay.
Can I look? Or?
Where can folks find out more about the tribe? It's tough because the media has paid so. Unless there's outright controversy, the media pays so little attention, unfortunately, to the tribe. Is there a single source? Is it a website or is it the Facebook page? I know we highlight the Facebook page in our pre-show promotion, but is that the best way to sort of keep abreast of what's going on?
Well, I know we have a website, Narragansett.org, I believe it is.
Right.
How updated that is, I'm not sure. But as you're saying that, it did come to mind earlier that if I know we have 2,600 members thereabouts, and not all adults, but for those adults, you may get different versions of what's going on with the tribe. Mm-hmm. If you were to ask 10 of us, it'd be interesting to see what came.
It's politics, just like in any other community.
Right, but if you really want to hear, talk to a Narragansett. The website, it is what it is, and I'm not sure if it's updated, and I don't believe it is. But have us come into the schools, have us interviews such as this. Maybe not every tribal member would want to do an interview, but nonetheless, even if what I'm saying isn't 100% agreed to by other tribal members, at least something's coming out to enlighten the viewer and as to something with the Narragansett tribe that they didn't know before. Again, we hold a lot of things close to vest, and we don't want everything known about us. But at the same time, if some kind of education, some kind of understanding, some kind of perhaps a sympathy or an empathy that may be grown from that insight, we're not looking for pity, but we're looking for respect that's due us, and at the same time that we give in like fashion.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, I certainly appreciate you coming in.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and I mean it when I say the door's open. If you have concerns, issues, you don't even got to call. Just we're here from 6 to 9. Just show up.
You might regret giving me that opportunity.
No. We have a hashtag for our show. It's hashtag Take It Personally, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for folks who dive into their community, and simply do things because they're the right things to do, who aren't. There's somebody a lot smarter than I once said that public service is supposed to be for people who want to help lives, not get one. And and again, 3 different people from 3 different walks of my life suggested that you were the person to speak to, that you would bring the fairest, most honest appraisal of life in the Narragansett Nation. I think you've done an admirable job of that, and this is a conversation we want to keep having going on.
I do appreciate it, Pat. I welcome this opportunity, and if others present themselves in the future, I'll take advantage.
No, we'll be in touch. Folks, Randy Noka, of course, he is a member of and intimately involved in the day-to-day affairs of the Narragansett Indian Nation, a seminal part both of the history of Rhode Island and of current Rhode Island, something that we need to remind ourselves. We're going to follow closely this water issue. I fully embrace his willingness to dive into this, make sure that this is not a done deal, that all the study and research necessary to make an informed decision will take place. I appreciate his respect. It's almost traditional in nature, his respect for the environment, and he points out quite aptly the Indian Nation support over at DAPL for the folks of the Dakota tribe that took place just a few short months ago. We could be looking at a similar event here.